creative was becoming the targeting on Meta long before they ever came out and said it. The more that manual tracking and media buying is obsolete and automated, the more the creative and the message that you're putting in front of people matters. Alex Earl's most recent skincare launch, she launched the ad video with a sound that she didn't mean to put on the video, and it's got a Cardi B song I think on top of it, and then he created a huge viral moment for them. And the days where you could launch a static ad in 19 different places that's the exact same just doesn't exist anymore, and honestly, good riddance. The creative part's a lot harder to teach somebody. Yeah. I've had ads that have spent tens of millions of dollars, singular videos, $100 million in ad spend, and I still sometimes have no idea.
Welcome back to D2C Unboxed. Today's guest has been in the world of D2C for the past 10 years and has managed over $100 million in media spend, working across the HelloFresh Group for brands like EveryPlate, Factor, and many, many more. And she also now works for Black Girl Vitamins, one of the fastest growing supplement brands that I've seen in recent times. She's deployed thousands and thousands and thousands of ads on Meta and TikTok. So she's really an expert when it comes to creative strategy and performance creative and media buying. So very, very excited to have her on today. So Mad,
Hi,
thank you so much for being here. How did you get into the world of D2C? Maybe you can give me a bit of background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. When I graduated college, I was working at an agency. A lot of my clients were in food and beverage, an industry that I really enjoy and hold dear. And I worked for a company called Matcha Konomi and did some of their e-commerce when matcha was really coming onto the Western scene.
Oh, cool. Matcha.
Yeah.
Product placement.
Absolutely love. And I think that scale of that company and the Amazon side and Amazon PPC side of stuff was really interesting to me. Worked for a company that did food distribution out of Colorado, Natural Food Works. They got acquired, but they had a few in-house brands and did all of their media stuff. And then working at HelloFresh and Factor for around 3 years.
That's how
great. Yeah, great time. Got to meet you. Got to start with Aura, which is obviously I'm biased, but my favorite. I was on their growth team, did all of their paid social and media buying, and pivoted into a performance creative strategy type role there. As kind of early days in the industry, I think performance creative strategy has blown up quite a bit, but that's really where I started building out our in-house performance creative program, and really working on the creative strategist side of media buying. And now I'm with Black Girl Vitamins. Started there in November. It's been an amazing ride, short but wonderful. I feel like I've been there for 2 days and 2 years. Huge growth, big scale. The amount that we're able to test and learn, the community around the brand, I think is really special. It's very inspiring to work with people who care so much about the company.
Incredible. So you've been obviously briefing creative for quite a number of years now. If you go back to the beginning of HelloFresh and before that, how have you seen, I guess, the creative programs evolve when it relates to these big brands, over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think traditionally there's sort of a brand marketing creative team growth structure, and that era of media buying and growth hacking really started to merge with creative a few years ago. I think creative was becoming the targeting on Meta long before they ever came out and said it. And I think that push from platforms like TikTok, propelling the industry into video and into more personalization and creative diversity, and really having to stop the scroll on media, just transformed the industry in a way that no one could have expected pre-COVID, pre-TikTok. And I think having to work with that inside of internal teams is interesting because you traditionally have someone that's really dedicated to that creative process versus someone who's really dedicated to the media buying. And I think knowing both has empowered me to have a unique point of view on the way that I view content overall. I think the liaisoning is really where the magic happens. And if you don't understand your ad placements and the media buying and the plan, you're not going to make assets that work for your tests. There's so many times that people are like, I want to test 12 things and I don't know how. I'm like, well, you can't just launch 12 ads into a campaign and expect to get the results that you want. So I think having both is a really unique position that they didn't have the opportunity to do at a lot of companies 5-10 years ago.
Totally. Super interesting. So I guess when you're thinking about obviously building the creative program and building ideas and putting creative into the account, I guess you need to start somewhere. My suspicion is you start with a roadmap or you start with a plan. Like, what's your take on, like, how do you kind of plan efficiently or plan a roadmap in a way that's strategic and intentional, but also giving you that kind of spread of creative that you actually need?
Yeah, I think depends on what you want to learn. Yeah. I always tell people that you can't overanalyze content. I think that I'm a big data analytics, like technical person. It's a lot of what I spend my time on. I am thorough in my A/B testing. However, I think there's an element to creative that's human, that's intuitive, that isn't formulaic in that way. So I kind of work in a 2-lane system that run in parallel. And they're not exactly in opposition, but I think they function at their best together. One of which is sort of that formula super ad kind of goal. So you think if I A/B test yellow versus green and like high contrast text versus low contrast text and offer on the top versus the bottom, you start to get these like best practices and these like brand Bibles that people live by in performance marketing. I think getting closer and closer to that optimization and like super ad is always a goal, but you can't have an ad account scale with one ad. So even if it's perfect on the data side, it's never going to take up all your spend. It's an environment, right? So as you build those best practices and you have the data to support your overall strategy, I think simultaneously it's really important to carve out time, creative energy, and budget for your really experimental stuff.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. And so I guess just to recap, so your buckets then are basically, bucket one is how do I optimize and refine and iterate on the stuff that's working and go deeper on the stuff that's working. Bucket two is how do you kind of throw new stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Like what's the energy distribution between that? Is it like 80-20? Is it 50-50?
I think it depends on the ad account and on the brand. It's varied throughout my career. I think some brands are more willing to be experimental. I do think that's rewarded. Ideally, I would probably go 50-50. But, I've seen 80-20 and I've seen 20-80. I think the more experimental you're willing to be, the more ahead of the curve you're going to be. But at the same time, ad accounts and algorithms and brand building like really comes in that iteration. Repeat messaging, and you're always going to be able to make better strides in marketing by playing in a place that you already succeed in. You can't teach a fish to climb a tree.
Yeah, you love that analogy.
It's my favorite one.
I love that. Okay, and I guess in terms of like the testing roadmap and the type of, so like within a creative, you've obviously got the message, like the angle, the hook, like some of these kind of creative elements, I guess, that make up the asset itself. In your mind, what are like what's like the biggest swing variable? Like what's the part of that creative that seems to dictate the most performance?
I mean, I think hooks is the obvious answer for a lot of people. Being able to capture people's attention and like hold rate are such a huge part of the formula. But the meat of your creative is really where people learn about your brand. So I think it's important to tell stories. I think it's important to educate the customer. And I think even if you have a really good hook, if you don't have anything to say it's really hard to get that brand sentiment and that conversion. And at the end of the day, all of the media that I work in is conversion focused. So even if it's not as direct response and traditional as a discounted static ad, it might be something educating somebody on a health condition or a new product. It's a different part of the funnel. I think that they work all together. I think hook is a very easy answer, but I always also push people to be really creative in their CTA. I think that like outro is an underrated part of a modular video.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think also your point there around if you don't have anything to say, the hook could be incredibly powerful, but if the core message is missing or it's misaligned, then it's not gonna drive the outcome. So that does make total sense. Going into like maybe your experience at HelloFresh. So again, huge growth program, lots of creative. That brand is obviously known for being quite discount led, and everyone grabs those discounts. How did you think about like the creative mix in the ad account, I guess, when you were working in that business? From what I see, these kind of like offer led statics, they're very low funnel, they're very tactical, but they're going for people that are kind of in market, ready to buy. They just want the discount. And then you've obviously got different types of assets that may be playing a different parts of that journey, like a bit more consideration, upper funnel stuff. Obviously, still in the context of acquisition, but yeah, how did you think about maybe like the overall asset mix when you're thinking about like fueling the ad account with the right amount of creative and making sure that sort of different assets hit different parts of that?
HelloFresh and subscription in general, I think, is a weird beast.
Yeah.
Even in the age of video and through the shift to video in media buying, I watched statics still really do a lot
totally
for like in that space, which people were always really shocked by. Like, I think discounting is a hard one. I think everyone, especially in e-com, really and subscription, really understand the value add and the sacrifice that comes with discounting. I think HelloFresh was in a unique position post-pandemic. They became a household name like because of their marketing, and I think the customer journey is really different when you try to tackle subscription. That uniqueness is hard to translate in content. I think focusing a lot on the customer experience, the food, addressing concerns directly. When you have a subscription box or like something that's consumable, because I've worked in food for so long, people are hesitant to trust people. They're like hesitant to trust companies. There's a lot of discourse on the food in America anyway. And so I think you have to build a lot of trust with your customer. Really, like if someone gets a missed delivery, like that can really scorn somebody. And everyone has had a lot of exposure to HelloFresh, especially through COVID, and delivery services in general. And they do get kind of lumped in together too. I think throughout that industry, when people think HelloFresh, it almost comes simultaneously with all of their competitors, even though they kind of lead the space. I think if you've tried one of them, consumers really associate them together. So I think that they're really battling like the reputation of all of it. I think at the end of the day, the core messaging staying around cooking, the customer experience, and really like just re-educating people. People love food content. I love food content.
Yeah, same.
So I think that's like always something I really tried to hero, that I found success in when moving away from like discounting messaging. I think everyone knows you can go onto the site and get a welcome offer at most places.
Completely. So it's I totally get that. And I guess you're quite uniquely positioned when you were at HelloFresh because you're working across the group. So you had like the HelloFresh brand, the Green Chef brand, EveryPlate, Factor. I guess I'm really curious about that. Gives you like such a unique perspective on the role that brand plays in creative, because I do feel like brand was playing a different role in each of those places. So like, what's your perspective on how brand plays a part of like performance creative in general? Yeah,
it's I mean, I applaud people that work cross brand.
Yeah.
I think especially in a creative strategy space, being able to pivot to multiple value props and brand angles and keep it all straight is a lot. Working cross-brand at HelloFresh was a beast, honestly.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job of having really unique value propositions. Factor isn't HelloFresh, and like Green Chef isn't EveryPlate. And I think that the different ways that they've set up those brands reflect a product market fit and like a customer that really wants it. I think someone who's family oriented and plant-based, finding Green Chef makes a lot of sense. There's like such a value add to EveryPlate from a cost efficiency point of view. And I think HelloFresh is kind of the mass marketed one and like the household name, and it for a good reason. It does have so many options, like the menu expansion that they've done, even like post me leaving. I still get HelloFresh boxes sometimes. So like I'm a user. Okay. Yeah. So I do believe in the product.
Yeah.
But I I do really love it. I think Factor's honestly one of the most innovative brands in the food space in the last 10 years. It's a really unique product. The quality of the food too always really surprises me, like the way that they really cook those meals and like put them in those, that like there's real people doing that. Wow. And it's crazy to me.
It's so interesting. And I guess I have lots of questions on this, but in terms of like the brand, and this is taking us a little bit down a different route, but in terms of those brands, they all produced in a similar way. Like, is the food inherently the same, or is it coming from different places?
Kind of, no. I would say there's more similar process and logistics around the meal kits, of course. I would assume even across industry. But no, I think Factor is different. It's a different beast, different distribution, different like teams. I think the nuance between those and like the customer, it is so customer focused, which I think is something that a brand should always be. And that sounds kind of crazy and current, right? Like, because I think that we've really caught up to that.
Yeah.
But there really was a time 3 to 7 years ago that nobody thought about what the customer was feeling. Like, in that, like, it was like how something looked on a shelf, or like what the like best copy and labeling looked like. It wasn't really about how does this person feel and why do they feel that way and why are they coming to us with this problem or like this solution or this idea. And I think food is such a communal and cultural and personal experience that if you're in any kind of consumable, you really have to value what the customer's thinking, and you have to brand yourself around that.
Yeah, I think being customer first is essential, I think, for any D2C brand that's trying to get really focused. I mean, for any business, to be honest, is, being customer focused, I think should be the center of everything. And I think it is overlooked sometimes. I guess it's also really interesting, going back to the way you described it. It sounds like also each brand has a different persona.
Yeah.
Like, was that must have been intentional. But like, how did you approach that, or how do you see that in terms of creatively? Like, do you see, different buckets of people for different brands and therefore different creative that you then have to produce in line with that? Yeah,
I think, I've seen it in a lot of different ways. I think e-com brands do it kind of by SKU. HelloFresh did it kind of by brand. I think in the wellness space, like Black Girl Vitamins kind of operates in a SKU focused way too. I think overall the way that I believe content really connects with people and you convert someone and you build brand sentiment and you stop the scroll is by someone feeling seen. I think there's a lot of gimmicky ways to, we've all seen like the edits and like TikTok transition, kind of like corny hooks, the anti-hook, the sticky note. Like there's some things that people understand around the performance marketing that's going to work. Dropping stuff down the stairs.
Yeah.
I think is like another like super
like
gimmicky one.
Like,
yeah. And those have a lot of value, get a lot of conversions. I think if you don't have those kind of creative, you should have them in your repertoire. But I think that the real content that I aspire to make and that I push teams to make is more connective than that. Like, I think that if someone is on their phone scrolling and they see it themselves in a video, that's what builds an emotional connection. And I think in a time where people's attention span is so short and we we have more touch points than ever before someone buys. That's how you make a lasting impression.
Completely agree. Yeah, I think that's everything that we see in our creative as well across our clients is the more that we can connect to people, the more that our content feels, like their friends speaking to them. This format of like street interviews that we talked about yesterday, working really well. And I think that's generally because it's someone connecting with someone else, and then you're connecting with the viewer. So I think that's a really nice like first principles thing that probably a lot of people do overlook.
Yeah, I think street interviews are always an interesting, like the man on the street experience, I think is a great formula because it does feel authentic. Grabbing people, I think, in a large city, you see people get stopped all the time now too. So I think there's also like almost a bit of like excitement in that. If like that could be me when I like leave my apartment, or just like I think that authenticity is really unique, and I think people are drawn to that. And there's definitely some staged moments and like different things, but I do think in general, like getting people's reactions. I even believe like when people do like sampling, or like I know like a lot of vitamin protein kind of companies, people in the wellness space will sit at gyms and like have you try pre-workouts and things. And I think even those interactions, like they're not exactly traditional man on the street, but they're the same principle, very human, very real. Like everyone on their phone is trying to connect to people in some way. And it's like, we could go outside, but we won't. Like, so I think any way we can bring the outside into the phone is like the new age.
I actually, philosophically, I very much agree with that. I think, we're all probably feeling more disconnected than we did 50 years ago. I mean, definitely feeling more disconnected than 50 years ago.
And like overwhelmed,
yes.
But with connection at the same time. It's a dichotomy
Exactly.
that's interesting.
The possibility of connection and the infinite amount of possible connection is probably creating a disconnect as well.
Yeah, it's intimidating, I think.
It's very intimidating.
Honestly.
It is. And you can feel it, I guess, when you're in somewhere like New York, because you're on the subway and people are obviously on their phones and everyone's looking down. But the reality is there's tons and tons of people around.
Yeah.
Do you like, again, taking that philosophy and what you just said, does that kind of, has that affected how you perceive creative, or how we should approach creative from a societal perspective, I suppose?
Yeah, I think obviously marketing is marketing. We're selling products, but I think that everyone who creates content and everyone who is on marketing teams has like a responsibility to making honest and good. I try to put good things into the world. I've been very fortunate in my career to work for products that I believe in and feel like emotionally tied to. I've worked with like really great people as well. And I think making things that you're proud of, and people can feel that overall. I think that building creative and content is really a muscle. It's really human. It's really intuitive. You build it by being online, by watching, by understanding what works and what doesn't. And sometimes it's not what you expect. And I think that, I guess the way that I've been empowered throughout my career to be able to test and fail has really taught me more than some of my most successful ads. I've had ads that have spent tens of millions of dollars, like singular videos. And they're valuable. But I think I've learned a lot more from things that had a terrible CTR that I really thought would work. And I thought is so like deep in my soul that it would be like the one. And I think, people surprise you. Algorithms surprise you. The reaction to things is not always what you expect. And I think that that's one of the reasons I really encourage that like parallel space of play. Because I personally, $100 million in ad spend, and I still sometimes have no idea. So I don't think it's ever something that you crack, unfortunately. I would hope I'd be there by now if it was.
I very much relate to that. It always feels like the ad you have least confidence in is always the one that seems to just crush it.
Yeah. You're like, I didn't even want to launch that one.
Yeah. I always remember when I first got into the space, someone said to me their best performing ad was one they accidentally launched from their like camera roll or something.
Yes.
Which is interesting because obviously, I don't know, I think it encourages like a continuous mindset around testing and challenging yourself to think differently, isn't it? Otherwise, you just sort of get bucketed into the same bucket as everyone else. And I think that's where you get really creative, is to I don't know, be continuously challenging yourself on that stuff as well.
Yeah, it feels almost organic too, which is weird. As a historically paid advertising person, I used to be the champion of like paid and organic are not the same thing. Get out of that. Like, I don't want to repost those videos, or like we can't strategize the same way. And I think that that's really evolved. People talk about going viral on TikTok, on Instagram, from an organic standpoint, and have really similar like parallel stories of just, this is not what I thought was going to resonate, and it does. Or like Alex Earl's most recent skincare launch, she like launched the ad video with a sound that like she didn't mean to put on the video, and it's got like a Cardi B song, I think, on top of it, and then like he created like a huge viral moment for them. And I think that those kind of silly things are also like a human element to the content that feels real.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like organic content, paid content is almost starting to become synonymous.
It's crazy. It's like something that I really used to tell people, like, don't feel that way. Don't do that. Like, that's, we got to change that. Like, there's different best practices over here. It's its own channel, and it has really started to merge.
Definitely. How does that kind of impact your, like, how you ideate or how you think about creative? Like, do you always go, again, if we go back to those two buckets, like iterating and building your, winning formulas versus blank canvas thinking, is the blank canvas thinking really rooted in organic, or like, how do you think about that?
I'm a big person, like I'm just a big visual inspiration person. I follow so many people. I'm always in people's ad libraries. Like, I'm always saving stuff on my personal feed. And I'm a consumer first. I think it's one of the things that makes me a good strategist. I am chronically online, incredibly plugged into pop culture. I like care a lot about the wellness industry. I care a lot about the food industry. Like, I am in it. And I think that submerging yourself in that is the best way to feel inspired. I've very rarely, which is crazy with how much content I produce, but like I very rarely feel like I don't have anywhere else to go. Like, if anything, like I'm constantly like behind. Like, I have more ideas than I have bandwidth, which is a very fortunate position, obviously, but it does come from saving tons of stuff and consuming a ton of stuff and being kind of silly.
Yeah.
I think that's really the magic, honestly.
Completely agree.
I think the whimsy is
the
really
whimsy.
the whole point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So how do you, so you obviously have all these ideas, and having abundance of ideas is a great place to be in. How do you prioritize them based on like what you want to test? Like, what's the process there?
It really goes into those two buckets. I'm a big personal and professionally, I think in general, you chase two rabbits, you get none.
Yeah.
Shout out Taylor. But I really just, I believe in it. I think that people, when they try to operate in a gray area and check all of the boxes in one foul swoop, is really where you miss the mark. Like, I would rather have like a 0-star and a 5-star ad, versus sitting in some like mediocre gray area. And so when I source inspiration and have ideas, I bucket them that way. I save things that are abstract, and I'll give visual and copy direction that's very on the vibes. I'm like, this is not what I'm saying, but like, this is what I'm like, bouncing it off my team, who I'm sure thinks I'm insane sometimes, but I really think, I really think that, those abstract concepts, I'm inspired by things outside of the industry a lot too. I think don't only look to people that you consider your direct competitors or like in your space. Encourage everyone to like jump outside of that. There's a lot of inspiration that you can be taken from other places. And sometimes I find things that are more similar to what I already know from my more formulaic side. So maybe I've tested something like sticky notes or like that kind of content, which I think is like just a kind of traditional performance marketing kind of format. And maybe I want to apply it to something that's like more sticker oriented overall in a design, and I see a different application of it somewhere, or I'm inspired by something like in the real world. Like I've taken pictures of things like in stores and like people's retail packaging or like installations that have inspired me in that way. And I think maybe categorizing them in that way, like the way that I kind of like file away my ideas are in those two buckets. And when something feels reminiscent of a learning that I already have, that's a way that I iterate.
Super interesting. Okay, and I guess across all of the work you've done over the past couple of years, is there like a creative, like an ad that sticks out as like, this was such a strange idea I had, or something that was just performed disproportionately well, that was just like a bit wacky and unique that you tested?
Ooh.
Or maybe you can just speak about like the best performing ads that you've put out there and what that was.
It's interesting. I know I spoke to this a bit earlier, but I think that some of the ones that stick out to me in my head most are the ones that did the worst.
Yeah.
Almost. I think there's a lot around ugly ads, right? Which I think is a really hard place for a lot of brands to play. Things that are less polished, things that maybe go outside the box, things that don't feel luxe or representative of the quality that like brands really want to feel. I think it's a hard place to be, but I encourage people to try it like within their bounds.
And why do you think that's a hard place to be, out of interest?
People are scared of risking their brand reputation. And I think people are scared of losing a visual identity to something like memes. And that like feels the low brow. But I think that's, especially in a younger market, like something that you have to sacrifice a lot. So I think that like conceptually, I also think a lot of the ads that I've seen work are so user experience driven, and directly address kind of an elephant in the room. So like if you have a customer complaint or a common experience that people like, hey, like I don't think I like this part, or this product like kind of doesn't taste good, or like whatever like it may be, I think getting more direct, being a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, I think is always kind of, I from what I've seen, rewarded. I think about like even big campaigns, things like in like Domino's did like a big rebrand about how their pizza sauce sucked a few years ago. Like, so I think there's like a lot of elements like that are bringing like success in brands to the forefront. I think that talking to specific people is another big recommendation that I have. I be niche, find personas that like really matter, that like embody real people and be real people's problems. I think in a world of so much information and so many products, everyone wants to solve something.
Yeah.
At every time.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's also important to be like super relevant, isn't it? Particularly in the context of Andromeda and like now how ads are being, served and placed is obviously hyper specific, hyper personalized. How have you, obviously Andromeda's become a lot more of a conversation in the past 12 to 18 months. So maybe it's not as applicable to your time at HelloFresh, but like I imagine it's very applicable now in terms of black girl vitamins. How are you seeing that problem impact the ad account or impact your day-to-day world?
You kind of have two types of media buyer perspectives. They're either like with it or against it. I've always been of the opinion that it's their playground and like we're on the platform. Like I've never saw a benefit in swimming upstream when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like turn off Meta?
Yeah.
like it's like I don't think that like an option exists that's like really productive. I'm like, So I think when people really get fussy about it, I just it's just not my point of view. I think the adaptation and the innovation that I've seen from Meta since the first time I launched an ad or like boosted a post was like 2015, 16. So long time ago. And I think the evolution of that for a really long time was so profit driven, so product driven. And in the last 4 or 5 years, like post COVID, post TikTok, it's a lot more consumer driven now. And I think that's a place that the industry should be. And I applaud it. I think the more that manual tracking and media buying is obsolete and automated, the more the creative and the message that you're putting in front of people matters. And I think that is, I understand that can be cause apprehension, but I think it's a good thing. And I really, as someone who's always cared about the content, I feel like I'm uniquely positioned in a good place to be launching ads now.
Yeah. One of the other guests I had on said that Andromeda feels like it's really brought us back to like first principles. It's just like exactly as you just said there. It's like, who is our customer? What do they care about? How do we like build a message and creative that just like speaks to them?
Real marketing, Mad Men kind of stuff, you know, like literally. It's the stuff you fall in love with like 20 years ago.
I actually love where we are now because I do think the hacky tactical stuff was less fun. Yeah. Like this feels a lot more human and a lot more how advertising is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. That growth hacking era, I mean, people made a lot of strides, a lot of money, a lot of really cool things came of it. But I think that idea of, I think of Amazon PPC kind of as like that hero of that growth hacking era. And I think that what we were used to try to do was really beat the algo, right? We were always sitting there being like, what's the keyword, the combination that works? What's the ad placement or the cost cap, like thing that's going to move the needle that like Meta's shifted their focus away. So like, we're going to run over here and hack it. Like, and wonderful, love a problem solving. I think those people are brilliant, but it's not as fun to me. And it's not marketing, like in the same way. Like I think marketing is always, and advertising is always supposed to have been more human. And yeah, I think the days where you could launch a static ad in 19 different places that's the exact same just doesn't exist anymore. And honestly, good riddance. Like it is operationally like much cheaper, but I think that it sacrifices brand sentiment and like long-term customer relationships that people, I mean, I'm sure some of those like big D2C blow up companies feel now.
Yeah, completely agree. So obviously you've deployed thousands and thousands and thousands of ads.
So many ads.
What's your like philosophy on creative testing? How do you approach it? How do you think about it?
Depends on who and what you want. I've done it a lot of different ways. I have a pretty simple structure generally. I believe in having a rough roadmap of things you're trying to figure out. I believe in tackling them with a lot of different kinds of creative. And that iteration piece is really important. You have a good hook, put it on more stuff. Like you have a really good tagline, headline, try it in different ways. Reworking things. I think that can be more abstract rather than like as cut and paste. But the account structure wise, essentially, I think you should creative test tons of ads in a unique campaign that you can spend up to 10 times your target CPA on that ad. I think that you should declare winners and losers against like a 25% inflation of whatever your target CPA is and throw them into scale campaigns pretty quickly.
Scale in place or scale outside?
A scale separate has always been, and it does change sometimes. Yeah. Meta's a weird one, but there's unique situations that I disagree. But in general, I think you should be able to test things quickly, spend small amounts of money on them relatively, and decide more winners than not. because once you put all of those winners into that scale campaign, if they're not gonna get spent if they weren't a winner anyways. I know a lot of people have hesitations on relaunching and duplicating ads overall. I am very much of the opinion that spend is king. If it doesn't win when you relaunch it, then it wasn't a real winner. Structure depends on where you are, but if you're scaling in your creative test campaign and you're scared to relaunch things, you're never going to have a sustainable ad structure. Your testing campaign muddies the waters a little too much if you're being fun and crazy, and that's not going to be rewarded at scale most of the time algorithmically. So I think for me, a good structure is ad sets being separated into like learning buckets. So if I want to test a certain hook versus another hook, or like a male versus female like video kind of thing, and get some of those robust learnings, most of that stuff's separated by ad set for me. I don't use a lot of A/B testing tools unless I really need firm learnings on something. Again, like spend is king. I think.
King. Yeah.
Whatever the algo picks, you'll know.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. In a way, again, that's like the first principles thing. It's just like, if it gets money and the platform likes it, it's obviously a good ad, rather than getting really technical on the breakdowns. Obviously, it's good to look at other stuff, but I agree with you. Spend is definitely king. Okay, so final question: if you were advising someone, so a strategist maybe getting into this world for the first time, what's like the one thing that they should really focus on to become the best they possibly can be?
If you're coming from a place of creative strategy, I would push you towards the technical world. I think that having the unique perspective of being a media buyer has empowered my ability to make good ads, make good testing campaigns, given me a lot of opportunity that I don't think I would have had if I didn't understand Meta and TikTok and buying ads and placements and optimization and windows. And like, I think that if the creative part comes naturally, you should really fine tune your analytical skills. And I think that it's a lot easier, honestly. I'm of the opinion that the creative part's a lot harder to teach somebody. And I think, I'm not the most technical, likely trained person ever, but I don't want to, undercut anybody, but I think it's a lot easier to learn. It's a lot easier to learn those core metrics than it is to teach somebody how to understand a creative.
Completely agree. Awesome. Well, this has been really great chat. So thank you so much for jumping on. Tons of great insights in there. So thank you.